Hello, my name is Nigel Massey and I'm the rector of the French Church of Saint-Esprit here in New York City. In this two-part video, I want to first explore the history of angels and their classification in Christian tradition, and then in the second video go on to explore how they've been depicted in Christian art. To get things going, we can perhaps imagine looking at the world in two different ways. Is the universe a sort of impersonal machine that's governed only by mechanical laws? Or does the universe have a purpose or a meaning that we might describe as consciousness? Any discussion of angels presupposes this latter view. The atoms, the heavens, the forces that move the universe are not mechanical, they're personal or purposeful, in that they contemplate God, they participate directly in the life of God and fulfill God's personal purposes. Now we've got that sorted, there's another important distinction to make. There's a crucial distinction between celestial beings like cherubim, seraphim, thrones, and what we call archangels or angels. What we call angels are those created celestial beings that have to do with human beings. But there are other heavenly beings too. We'll look at some of them a little bit later on, but these beings have little directly to do with human beings at all. They face towards God and not towards us. So let's begin briefly with the former, the angels. The word literally means messenger, a messenger of God. It's first and foremost a job description more than anything else. They're spirits, they're created, they're not co-eternal with God, and therefore they're not to be worshipped. They're not omniscient either. Jesus himself tells us that they don't know the date of the end of all things. How many times are they actually mentioned in the Bible? Well, actually almost 300 times. They're present on key occasions, from creation through resurrection to the end of time. They comfort Jesus in the wilderness and then again in the Garden of Gethsemane. The earliest mention of angels describes them as the angel of the Lord, in the same way that you'd say the word of the Lord. They're instruments of God. They come down from the celestial court and deliver messages. They stop things from happening, or they warn people. Nobody's actually very worried about what they look like. They're just part of a mystical and spiritual world that interacts with ours in a variety of ways. In the earliest parts of the Bible, the angels appear as ordinary human beings. The description and the role of angels changes between their earliest mention in the Bible and the time of Jesus, especially when it comes to the highest orders like the cherubim and the seraphim and the thrones. The apocalyptic books of the Bible are good examples of this. They're a turning point between the older Middle Eastern conception of angels and messengers and the angels as potent divine forces who fight on behalf of God's people. The apocalyptic book of Daniel is the first to mention angel by name, like Michael, who is like God. He represents the kindness of God and always intercedes and champions human beings. Gabriel means God is my strength. He's the greatest of the messengers who performs acts of justice and of power. Other named angels are not in the Bible, but they come from more or less contemporary texts that never made it into the canon of the Bible books that we're most familiar with. Raphael is one of these. That means the healing force of God. Jophiel means God's beauty. This is the angel who expels Adam and Eve from paradise. Uriel is the light of God, the one who shows us our destiny and holds the book of life. Samael means the venom of God, sometimes viewed as the angel of death or the angel that fought with Jacob. The reason for the proliferation of these angels in apocalyptic literature is quite simple. The return from exile in Babylon is initially quite comfortable. But then other forces and other powers, political powers, arise that oppose the chosen race. They're in an oppositional relationship now with Persians, with the Greeks, with Antiochus Epiphanes of Syria. God has to provide a power to them that's stronger than their enemy's power. These are the avenging angels that God sends against their persecutors. And this latter idea gave rise to the idea of guardian angels. So what happened to the angels in Christian tradition? In the New Testament, there's a continuation of the idea that angels are messengers. Gabriel is the messenger to Mary, and angels come to the Magi with messages, as we can see from this slide. At the same time, there are hints of something new, a sort of personal relationship with angels. When Peter's released from prison, it's his angel that releases him, not the Holy Spirit or God. In the book of Hebrews, we read that some have entertained angels unawares. We also hear about guardian angels in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 18, verse 10, where Jesus says about the little children, "Don't despise these little ones. Their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father." These angels don't just work for single people, they work for communities of people, like the angels of the 7 churches of Asia, who act as those churches' guardians. But there's also a powerful tradition in Revelation, where we read about avenging angels. The angels represent God's power when all other earthly powers have failed. You know that you've got God on your side, but you also have these super powerful beings, angels that God sends with flaming swords. There are hordes and multitudes of them now, and you are now caught up into a much more glorified and glorifying world than the world of persecution that you're living in. Now let's look at these various orders of angels in a little bit more detail in order to see what happened to them after biblical times. Angels were accepted by everybody. Christian, Jewish, Eastern Orthodox, Syrian Orthodox liturgy take them all for granted. We're never alone in worship. We join with these angels in this sort of unbroken song of praise to God. In the 400s, a writer known as Dionysius the Areopagite explored these orders of angels in a sort of angelology. He described 9 levels of angels, drawing on texts from the Old and New Testaments. They're separated into a hierarchy of 3 sets of 3. In the first order, we have the seraphim, the cherubim, and the thrones. They're in constant contemplation of the divine. They turn towards God, absorbing God's light in full measure, and then passing that light down to the lower levels. The seraphim represent love, and they're represented as burning with fire. It's a seraph that comes to touch Isaiah's lips with the flame from the fire that burns before the throne of God. Secondly, we have the cherubim, who represent knowledge. They have 4 faces, traditionally: a man, an ox, a lion, and an eagle, whose wings are covered with eyes. Incidentally, St. Aquinas thought that Satan was a fallen cherub, since seraphs representing love can never fall away, but knowledge can. The thrones are to do with divine presence and divine power, potentiality of God, sort of psychological archetype. These are forms of consciousness that lie between us and God, different ways of perceiving or knowing God than human ways. On the second sphere, we have the heavenly governors and the executors of God's will, beginning with the dominations or lordships. They are in charge of the lower angels. They regulate their duties. They don't appear to human beings. The virtues control the elements. They are the spirits of motion that assist in governing nature, We remember that this word virtues, the virtue of something is its essence or power. The virtue of its medicine is its power to heal. The powers are the angels who have power over evil forces. They're the sort of counterintelligence of God. They restrain evil forces both in the spiritual realm and in the human realm and stop them from doing harm. In this third sphere, we have forces who have human interactions now, beginning with the principalities. These are angels that guide nations or groups of people or institutions, like the church. They're also rather like the muses. They're in charge of art or science or music. Then come the archangels, the chief messengers. These are the 7 that we come across in the book of Revelation. And finally, we have the angels. These are the ones who move down from the heavenly realm into the earthly world and bring the messages of God to us. These are the spiritual beings, the angels, that are most concerned with human beings. These different orders are a little bit hard to depict in art, and we'll explore how Christians have done that next time. After Dionysius the Areopagite, Christians studying angels asked more and more questions. Take St. Aquinas and angels as an example. Where do angels fit into the picture? Do they have bodies? And if so, what are their bodies made of? When were they created? The Bible actually doesn't tell us when they were created. And what were they created from? St. Aquinas believed that they were half fire and half ice. He also thought that their bodies were subtle, that's to say, they were not material. They didn't have desires or free will. And they even become a sort of model for humans. They were viewed as intermediary movers. The question was, where does movement start from? Movement is always initiated by something else, so it must begin somewhere. How does this movement end up moving us? And angels were considered as these intermediaries of this movement. They transfer movement from God, the prime mover, to earth. And angels are now used to explore ideas too. Can an idea exist in a vacuum? Can an idea exist without eyes, without ears? So, what did Protestants make of angels? Well, there's very little emphasis on them, it must be said. The Reformers weren't really very happy with concepts of spiritual hierarchy. They wanted to get back to the origin, the heart of the thing, without these intermediaries, whether these intermediaries be Mary or the saints or angels or the Pope or priests. Instead of a sort of imperial court, they want direct access to the members of the Trinity. The long tradition of the relationship between angels and the liturgy persisted. We sing with the seraphim, the holy, holy, holy. The Gloria at the start of Holy Communion is the song of the angels at the birth of Jesus. But the angels still hang around in other ways too. Here you can see some angel roofs. These angel roofs were really created in the late 1300s, early 1400s, made out of wood, and they were actually too high up in the church for the iconoclasts under the Reformation of Edward VI in England to reach up and destroy or deface or paint over. They also actually support the roofs themselves, so they were difficult to destroy without destroying the roof of the church itself. These angels were also shown on rood screens, these screens that separated the altar from the people. You can see why they were there. They were intermediaries between these two worlds. Some of them actually survive in great stone cathedrals, and sometimes you can see how the reformers, or those who represented them, defaced them on these rood screens where you can clearly see their angels, but their faces have been scraped away. They also appear in the great hymns of the Christian tradition, one famous one, Ye Holy Angels Bright, and also that great hymn which begins, Ye Watchers and Ye Holy Ones. This idea that the angels are the watchers actually comes from the Syriac Christian tradition of the East. Protestants didn't really discuss angels. They're a bit embarrassing, perhaps, to them. Apart from guardian angels, they liked guardian angels. They evoke a sense of personal responsibility that was important to the reformers. Now we saw that in the Bible, angels were initially thought of as appearing a little bit like ordinary people. But by the 1600s, they become more and more ethereal. The angels cease being solid figures, and they're banished back to heaven and not engaged here anymore dynamically and personally on earth. But their appeal remains, mostly based on the idea that these angels, these guardian angels, our personal angels, are here to minister to us, to comfort us, to save us from danger, or to save us from our own worst instincts. Now, popular belief in angels persists even today. Sometimes, unfortunately perhaps, that appeal is purely commercial and popular, and perhaps has little to do with the Bible at all. In our next recording, we're going to look a little more detail at how these cherubim and seraphim and archangels and angels have been depicted in Christian art. Why did they get wings, for instance? And are they always depicted without beards? So thanks for listening to this presentation. I hope you'll be able to follow along with the next one too, where we'll have lots of different pictures of the way in which angels have been depicted from the earliest days in the catacombs to the later times too. Thank you, and cheerio for now.